All right, good evening and welcome to the Torah studies. And this week, Parshas Vayeishev, getting ready also for the Yom Tov of Yud Tes Kislev, the 19th of Kislev, which is the liberation of the Alter Rebbe, the first Chabad Rebbe. It is called the Rosh Hashanah for Hasidus. That's going to be Friday and Shabbos. And Thursday night we're going to have a Farbrengen here in the Chabad House at 8 o'clock Thursday. So the topic we're discussing is keep climbing. Trajectory is all that matters. Talking about being a good Jew. What does it take to be a good Jew? Is it someone that does all the mitzvahs and does all the good things? Or is it something that, what about people who are not yet there? So we're going to get a very powerful lesson from the teachings of this week's Torah portion. And it is the way the Rebbe explains a very technical Rashi, in a sense. But the message is indeed very powerful. So just to give a little background of what we're talking about, what is this Torah portion discussing? Parshas Vayeishev talks about Yaakov Avinu finally arriving in the Holy Land after being in exile for so long, getting married, having his family, and but then he didn't have rest even when he got to Eretz Israel. The story with Yosef, his sons were jealous of Yosef, was his the younger son, the second to the youngest, and he was a favorite son in a way. So we're not going to go into the story, what happened in details. We know that they sold him as a slave. They wanted to kill him, and then they ended up selling him as a slave. And then the one who gave the advice, the one who suggested that they should sell instead of killing him, was Yehuda. Yehuda was the fourth son of Yaakov, and he had a position of leadership among the sons. The tribe of Yehuda, by the way, is also the tribe that comes King Mashiach, as we'll soon see. King David is the tribe that always was Judea, comes from Yehuda. And so after he did this, he suggested they should sell him, and they did sell him. They listened to him. They came to the father, and they didn't tell him the truth, of course. But they made a whole plot, and they slaughtered a goat, and they took Joseph's favorite shirt, the shirt that Yaakov made him, and they put it in the blood, and showed it to the father, and the father came up with his own conclusion that he was killed by an animal, that it was killed. And he fell into such mourning without ability of being consoled. And the brothers saw the tremendous pain that this caused their father, and they obviously were very upset. And they blamed Yehuda. Said, Yehuda, you told us to sell him. We listened to you. If you would have told us to bring him back to the father, we would have listened to you. In Israel, they have the campaign, not that we agree with this, but against Netanyahu, they say, Ata Rosh, Ata Hashem, you're the head, you're at fault. Being in a position of leadership obviously has its credits, but has also its responsibilities, and that's what they blamed Yehuda. So what Yehuda did, the Torah says, Vayered Yehuda, he went down, he went away from his brothers, and he had a descent in a way. He was demoted from his brothers, and he went, and then he got married with a Canaanite woman, and he had 3 children. And then he found a wife for his sons, for his older son, Tamar, a righteous woman. However, the son was not so righteous, and he passed away. And after this, after he passed away, Yehuda gave the second son to marry Tamar, a Levirate marriage, to build a home for his brother. But his brother was not better than his older brother, and he also passed away. So Yehuda told Tamar, "Wait until my younger son Shelah, until he grows older, and then you will marry him." But he didn't really intend to give him. He was afraid. He figured that this is the woman that gets rid of her husbands. People die. However, so the long story short, Tamar realized that this is not happening, and she decided she wanted to have children with Yehuda, and she went on the way in a crossroads where she was told Yehuda is coming. And indeed, Yehuda, as the Torah says, I mean, there is the literal reading and there is the deeper understanding that really what happened there, Yehuda actually gave her something to concentrate her as a wife. And he had relations with her, and she became pregnant. But then she disappeared, and Yehuda didn't know who it was. And the Torah tells us, I mean, we're not going to all the details, what happened later. The one thought that she was wrong, he wanted to execute her, and then she told him the signs that Yehuda should realize that he was the one who is the father of the children. And then she had the 2 sons who were both twins, who were both righteous people. And one of them was the Peretz, who is the Mashiach. King David comes from him. So what we are focusing now, as I said before, we're going to focus on a technical detail, but it's a very interesting technical detail that the Rebbe explains this, and that is the location. The Torah mentions the location where this took place. That encounter between Yehuda and Tamar, where did it take place? It took place on the way to a place called Timnah. So let's see inside. So here's the verse. The Torah says as follows: "And days passed, and Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua," I missed that part. This was in the meantime, after his children died, then his wife died. So Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, passed away. Judah was consoled and ascended with his friend Chira, the Adullamite, to Timnah to oversee his sheep shearers. So they were partners, Yehuda and Chira, and he went to take care of his sheep, to shear the wool. And then Torah says, Tamar was informed, "Behold, your father-in-law has ascended to Timnah to shear his sheep." So here, reading this verse, we understand where is Timnah. what topographical area was Timnah. We know that it's on a top of a hill, a top of a mountain or something, because it says clear that behold, your father-in-law has ascended to Timnah. He went up to Timnah. All right. However, Rashi points out, he quotes this verse, ascended to Timnah, and he says, wait a second. But of Samson, it is written, and Samson descended to Timnah. All right? It seems like a contradiction. Here it says that he went up to Timnah, ascended, and by Samson, the story of Samson, which was many years later, in the book of Judges, it talks about Samson, he went down, he descended to Timnah. So Rashi brings a simple answer, and he says, the city was located on a mountain slope. One could ascend to it from the bottom and descend to it from the top. Okay, so that's clear, understood? That was the question. Question why here it says he went up to Timnah. By Samson it says he went down to Timnah. And the answer is that it was actually in the middle of a mountain, in the middle of a slope. You can come up and you can go down. So Yehuda went from the bottom, came up. Shimshon, Samson went down to Timnah. The Rebbe, as we mentioned in the previous lessons, the Rebbe has his understanding, is teaching us what are the rules of Rashi, when does he explain things, why does he explain things, and there is no extra words in Rashi. Whenever Rashi gives us an extra word, that means there's something we didn't understand. So number one, the Rebbe is asking a question here. Here it says that there is a contradiction. Here it says that Yehuda ascended to Timnah, and in Shoftim, in the book of Judges, it says that he descended to Timnah. Shimshon descended to Timnah. One of the rules is Rashi is teaching to the 5-year-old the simple understanding of the verse. The 5-year-old didn't learn yet the book of Judges. He doesn't know the story of Samson yet. So why is Rashi asking that question right here? He doesn't have the 5-year-old doesn't have a question here. When it comes to the book of Judges, we can ask that question. How come here it says ascending and there it says descending? That's question number one. Question number two. That is this verse that talks about, if assuming this is the place to ask the question, that's not really the first time that the Torah mentions that he went up. A verse before this we just read, in verse 12, we already read, Judah was consoled and ascended with his friends, Chira, to Timnah. So why, if you want to ask the question, why don't you ask in the first verse that I mentioned that he ascended? You only ask the question in the verse 13, where it says ascended. Okay, so it all sounds technical, but you'll see how the clarity that the Rebbe gives to this, as we shall soon see. Question number 3, the Rebbe asks in Rashi. If you read the Rashi carefully, it sounds that Rashi is here superfluous. When he says, but of Samson, it is written, and Samson descended to Timnah. So Rashi could very easily write, but it is written, and Samson descended to Timnah. Why does he say but of Samson? It is written, and Samson descended to Timnah. So this seems to be extra. Those are the three questions that the Rebbe asks in this verse, and we'll get to some understanding and the lesson that we have. So this is to review again the questions. Why does Rashi address the ascent in Genesis before the descent in Judges is encountered? We don't know about the story of Judges yet. Question number 2 was, if Rashi has a good reason to bring it up at this point, why didn't he raise the question to verse 12, where the ascent was first mentioned? And question number 3, why did Rashi specify that the passage in Judges was written about Samson when the passage he quotes says just that? Why does he mention that? So the Rebbe gives us clarity in this verse, and he's telling us you misunderstood what Rashi is asking altogether. You know what bothers Rashi in the verse? What bothers Rashi is what it says here, that it was told to Tamar, your father-in-law ascends to Timnah. Okay? Why does the Torah have to mention the topographical region, what it was? It was an ascending. You could just say, very simple, he's traveling to Timnah. Why is it important for us to know? Why is it important for us to know that he was ascending? He was going up. And indeed, we do find in other places in the Torah where people went up to the mountain, and the Torah doesn't say that they went up. The Torah just says they traveled, they went. For example, the story with Avraham Avinu, our father Abraham, when God tells Abraham to go up to bring Isaac as an offering. What does Rashi say? What does the Torah say? The Torah says he got up in the morning and he went to the place. Hashem told him to go to the Mount Moriah. It was obviously a mountain, was going up, but the Torah doesn't say that he went up. The Torah just says he was traveling. This is the verse. The Torah says, and he arose, got up in the morning, and went to the place, and they came to the place. So it doesn't mention anything about going up and going down. And the answer is based on what we said before. When you take this story and you put it in the context, what happened with Yehuda advising to sell Yosef, and what happened then? The Torah says Yehuda went down. He descended. So when the Torah says Yehuda went down and descended, Rashi explains that was not an actual descent. It was a virtual descent. It was a spiritual descent, or something that the Yehuda was demoted. It wasn't a literal descent. Here it says, Vayeishev, and it was at that time, and Yehuda stepped down from among his brothers. It says, Vayeishev Yehuda Vayeishev. He went down, he stepped down. So when the Torah says that Yehuda stepped down, and then following this, you read the story of Yehuda going up, how do we understand it? With this context, we understand that going down Going down means going down, being demoted, and going up means that eventually that incident with Tamar, that was the beginning of Yehuda going down, going up, ascending once again to his position of leadership. That is what the Torah is telling us. So Rashi says there, when he went down, Yehuda went down, says Rashi, Judah's brothers demoted him for his high position, from his high position. When they saw their father's distress, they said, you advised us to sell him. Had you advised us to return him, we would have obeyed you. So Judah was demoted by his brother after causing his father distress. So the process of his reinstatement began with his journey to Timnah after his wife's passing. This is why the Torah describes Judah's journey to Timnah as an ascent. Okay? So if you read this story of Yehuda going up to Timnah in verse 12, we don't have a problem there in verse 12 that it says that he ascended, because this goes in continuation to what happened before, that he was demoted and now he's going up to Timnah. And that was the beginning, as the Torah testifies, that this was the beginning of his going up, once again to go up. However, so this is in verse 12. Verse 12, we don't have a problem. But in verse 13, when it says again that Tamar is told that your father-in-law is going up to Timnah, this is where Rashi says, wait a second. That second time that it says going up, that cannot mean in terms of going up, being once again reinstated, going up spiritually. Why not? Because there is a difference between what we read in verse 12 and in verse 13. In verse 12, who is the narrator? Who is the narrator there? Go back to the verse 12. Verse 12, and days passed, and Judah's wife, the daughter of Shua, passed away. Judah was consoled and ascended with his friend Hira Adonai. So who is the narrator? The Torah. God is telling us that Yehuda was ascended. The Torah is telling us that this is the time when Yehuda started coming back to his position. He had children with Tamar and so on, which led to two righteous children being born and so on. But in verse 13, who is the narrator in verse 13? Tamar was informed, behold, your father-in-law has ascended. Who is telling it to Tamar? Her friends. So her friends telling Tamar, you know, your father-in-law has ascended. Obviously, they're not talking about some spiritual ascending. They're talking about physical ascending, going up the mountain, climbing up. That is why Rashi is bothered here with the question, why is that important to know that it was a physical ascending? Okay, so now we have the answer why of the question why it doesn't two questions we answer. Question number one, why are we bothered with the question here? We didn't hear the story, the opposite, what it says by Shimshon. And the answer is because we're not bothered of the contradiction. We're bothered in the first place. Why is it important for us to know that he's going up the mountain? And a question number two, we ask, why doesn't he ask about the same question in verse number 12? And the answer is because in verse number 12, it's not a problem. when the Torah says, God is telling us in verse number 12 that Judah was ascending. He went up. That was his spiritual ascending. So that is where we're holding now. Okay. And this is from Maskela David. He says this. The phrase, and he ascended, from the verse 12, can be interpreted as the Torah is testifying that he ascended because he was elevated by his journey. That journey to Timnah elevated him. So that's why the Torah mentions there that he ascended. But this passage in verse 13, where the Torah recounts that Tamar was told, behold, your father-in-law has ascended to Timnah, that is different. It cannot be said that the ordinary folk who informed her of Judah's journey used the term ascending because Judah would eventually be elevated by this journey. How would they know? So that is why this explains these questions. So in the verse 13, it was Tamar's friend who told her that Judah was ascending. So this must mean that he was physically ascending to Timnah. However, we must still answer the third question. Why is Rashi telling us about Shimshon? And about Shimshon, it means that it says that he descended. So we may ask the question also, why would we build if, let's say, Timnah, it says Timnah was in the middle of on the slope. Why would you build a house, a city, a town in the middle of the slope? You know, back in the days, they would build either on the bottom by the water, or they would build the city on the top. If they were afraid of enemies, you build it on top. Israel just took over the Syrian part of the Mount Hermon, which was much, much higher level, because there is the danger now of the enemies now. Whoever the took over, it's not clear what's going to happen there. So they took over the Mount Hermon. If you've been to Israel, you go to Masada, the story of Masada also. They built their little town over there on top of the mountain. Why would you build something in the middle of the slope? And what we can understand from here, says the Rebbe, you can build with all the difficulties that there is building a house on a mountain. It's not easy. We skipped a few texts over there, but with all the details, what the difficulties are. But you can have a reason to have a mountain. You build a mountain in the middle of the slope. It could be because there is in the middle, if you are going to be an intersection of merchants passing by from the top to the bottom, you can build in the middle also. And there you can go up and go down. And this is what the Rashi is telling us. When the Rashi is telling us by Tamar that she is told by her friends that Yehuda, your father-in-law, is coming up to Timnah. Why is that important? We asked the question, why is that important for her to know, or for us to hear, that he was coming up? And the answer is very simple. Because if Timnah was in the middle of the mountain, middle of the slope, and Yehuda is coming to Timnah, she wants to obviously to go and greet him and meet him in the intersection. She needs to know where to go. So if she is told that Yehuda is coming up, obviously he's coming from the bottom of the mountain, so she'll find a way and that part of the entrance to the city. If it would be going down to the mountain, she would go find another place to meet him. This is why the Torah tells us where it was. There is different ways of answering the difference between here and by Yehuda and by Shimshon. We know what happened by Shimshon. When Shimshon went to Timnah, what happened there? By him, it was actually a spiritual descent. That was the beginning of his downfall. When he met the non-Jewish woman there and so on, what one thing led to another. That was the beginning of the downfall of Shimshon. Yehuda, it was the beginning of his ascending. So, lest you think that this is the reason why by Shimshon it says that it was going down, that is why Rashi mentions, no, B'Shimshon Uomer, that by Samson, it keeps repeating there that is going down. It keeps repeating there, so it's not just something that a message that he was having a spiritual downfall, but there it mentions that it was physically, literally going down. And that is why Rashi has to teach us the lesson and explain that really that place, that location was actually not on the top of the mountain and not on the bottom. It was just in the middle of the slope. And the Rebbe tells us that there is the powerful lesson, what we learn from this message, the message that we take from this teaching. Life is like you're middle of climbing, and it can be a slippery slope. The same place going by one person, they went down, the other person went up. If you want to succeed in life, says the Rebbe, if you want to make sure you don't fall, you have to keep on climbing. Something similar we've learned also earlier in this portion about Yosef. They put Yosef down into the pit. The Torah says, "Ve'abor reik en bo mayim," that the pit was empty. There was no water in it. The pit was empty. They put him down in a pit. The pit was empty, and there was no water in it. Isn't that obvious? If it's empty, obviously there's no water. Why does the Torah say there's no water in it? And Rashi tells us there is no water in it, but there was other things in there. Nechoshim ve'akrabim, there was snakes and scorpions in that pit. Hashem made a miracle that he didn't harm Yosef. Says the Rebbe, what is water? The Torah is a metaphor for water. The water is a metaphor for the Torah. Ein mayim ela Torah. There's no water but Torah. And the reason why water is compared to Torah, it says just like water, the same water that you have on top of the mountain, could be the highest mountain, the same exact water comes down to the bottom. And when you drink the water, you drink the exact same water that is on the top. Unlike other things, for example, light. If you have a flashlight and you show the flashlight from the top or from a far place, when you're close to the light, or the sun, for example, when you're close to the sun, obviously the sun is much more intense. As further you go, the weaker it becomes. But the water is not like that. The water is the same exact water that is on top of the mountain. The same exact water comes down. But if the pit is empty, if there is no water, the pit will never stay empty. The pit is like a vacuum. If there's no water, there's going to be snakes and scorpions. And the moral from this is that our head, our brain, our mind is like a vacuum. It has to be filled with something. If you want to grow, fill it up with Torah. If there is no Torah, there's going to be snakes and scorpions. If you're doing good things, you keep doing good things, keep climbing, keep doing. Don't ever go back and say, oh, okay, I did enough, that's it. Let me relax, No, keep climbing, because as soon as you stop climbing, it's going to be a downfall. So this is, says the Rebbe, is the lesson from here. So Rashi's point was not that the passage was written about Samson, as that is clear from the text. Rashi's point was that the repeated mention of Samson's descent to Timnah it was literal descent, proving that Timnah was on a slope. And this is the message, says the Rebbe. It says, Mi yale bar Hashem yokim kam kotrei. Who will climb God's mountain, and who will arise to his holy place? Climbing up, when they say the soldiers, and they fight the war in Gaza, and now they're talking about making a ceasefire for a little while. So this is one of the most dangerous things for the soldiers. When they keep fighting, they're on their own and forward. They can be aware of everything. But once they stop in one place, they become vulnerable to be hit. Chas v'shalom. The same thing in spiritual sense. You're fighting. When you keep going, you keep fighting. You're on that road and on that way of fighting and growing. Then there is no going back. Once you stop in one place in order to stand, just like when you climb up physically up on a place, you climb up physically on a place, climb up a mountain. If you stop in the middle of the road, the middle of the climbing, you need tremendous strength to be able to stand in that place and not fall down. The way to keep is to not to fall down is when you keep climbing. As the Rebbe says here, from the teachings of our sages, it would appear that Moses never climbed the physical mountain. This is from the Derakanti. It doesn't mean that he never climbed. It means that the main thing, the Moses climbing of the mountain, yes, of course, there was Mount Sinai there. But the deeper meaning of it, Rabbi Yossi says the divine presence never descended below, nor did Moses descend to the heaven. I suggest that when the Torah says Moses climbed the mountain or ascended to God, It does not refer to an actual climb. The intention is that Moses received divine permission to ascend to ever higher spiritual levels. And here is the message the Rebbe tells us. It is known that when climbing and ascending a mountain, we can stop midway and stand for a time on the slope. If we do, it is almost inevitable that we will stumble and fall downward. Rather, we must continue our climb without pause. Climbing God's mountain is similar in the sense that one must always be climbing to ensure they don't fall. We must never be content with the spiritual level we have reached thus far. Contentment with our current level and failure to ascend from one sacred level to the next inevitably leads to descent. There's a story with the Rebbe, the Tzemach Tzedek, and his grandfather, the Alter Rebbe. Tzemach Tzedek he was a little boy, 7 years old. He was playing with his friends, and they were climbing up a tree or pole or something, and they were having a competition. And all of the children were climbing up, and eventually they gave up and they came down. But Tzemach Tzedek kept climbing and all the way to the top. And his grandfather, the Alter Rebbe, was looking at the window, and he later asked him, "Tell me, how come your friends gave up and they fell or they went down, but you kept going and you went up to the tops?" So he told him, "My friends, when they were climbing up, they were looking down to see how much they climbed. When I was climbing up, I was looking upwards. I was looking to see how much more I need to climb." And that is the amazing lesson. There's a beautiful song. We'll make a little musical entertainment here also by Avram Fried. The song talks about keep climbing. Beautiful song. Let's watch this song, listen to this beautiful song.
Life is a mountain we must climb. We don't have forever, just the time He gives us. Get to the top if you can. This is the challenge of man. Yes, you might fall and tumble down. Sometimes that happens when you dare. Knowing you, my child, you'll pick yourself up, start again from there. Keep climbing, don't let nothing stand in your way. Keep believing, pay no attention to what they say. Up is where you wanna go. It's dark and lonely down below. Keep fighting, this is one fight you won't regret. Keep believing, you've got what it takes, now don't forget. Up is where you belong. It's where your soul will find her song. Make sure you take one step at a time. Remember that surrender is the road to nowhere. Be proud of how far you've come. You said it couldn't be done. Oh, dig in and breathe out. There's more to climb. To give up now would be such an awful shame. Give it all you got, my child. You don't want to lose all that you have gained.
Keep climbing. Don't let nothing stand in the way. Keep believing.
Pay no attention to what they say. Up is where you want to go. It's dark and lonely down below. So keep fighting. This is one fight you won't regret. Oh, keep believing. You've got what it takes. Now don't forget. Up is where you belong. It's where your soul will find her song. There's no thrill when standing still, but there is a way when there is a will. Touch the divine. Continue to climb. Keep climbing. Don't
Don't let nothing stand in your way.
Oh,
Keep believing.
pay no attention to what they say. Up is where you wanna go. Oh, it's dark and lonely, lonely down below. Don't let nothing stand in your way. Keep believing.
Keep fighting.
This is one fight you won't regret. Oh, keep believing. You've got what it takes. Now don't forget. Up is where you belong. It's where your soul will find her song. Life is a mountain we must climb.
This is it. We gotta keep climbing. We've got it. We got what it takes. So thank you all for joining tonight. I hope you enjoyed the song of Avram Fried, along with the shir also.
Thank you, Rabbi.
You're very welcome. Were you able to hear the song well?
Yeah,
Yes,
very,
Yeah, yeah,
very
good,
clear.
good, good. I thought it
I
was
didn't expect it. That caught me
What?
by surprise, I'll be honest with you. I
Yeah,
haven't heard the song in the Torah class before.
yeah, that's what it's all about. We serve Hashem with all our bones, with all our faculties. That's what Hashem gives us. Music, it gives us feelings and emotions and listening, understanding, and we involve everything in the service of Hashem.
Right. Thank you, Rabbi. I appreciate it.
You're very
thank you,
welcome.
Rabbi Cohen.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.
You're very welcome. You're very welcome.
Thank you, Rabbi.
All
Good
the
night.
best. All the best, everyone. Good night.